Hello friends, hope you are enjoying the lecture and doing well. I welcome once again all of you to the course Current Regulatory Requirement for Conducting Clinical Trials in India for New Drug and the Investigational New Drug version 2. Today we are going to see lecture 5 in which we are going to see the different rules. This lecture is about rules governing clinical trials. So, we are going to focus more on the rules which are related to the clinical trials. After completion of this lecture, the learners, the trainees, they will be able to know what is clinical trial as per rule, then rules under which application for clinical trial can be made, then what are the rules under which there has been given the mention of post trial assess, then what are the rules for the deemed approval, in which rules the timelines have been given, and which are the rules with respect to bioavailability and bioequivalence study center. So, let us start one by one. Dear friends, before going to see what are the rules which govern the clinical trials in India, we must know what is means by the clinical trial and the definition of the clinical trial as per this new drug and clinical trial rule. So, the definition of clinical trial has been given under the rule 2J of new drug and clinical trial rule 2019. As per this definition, clinical trial in relation to a new drug or investigational new drug means any systematic study of such new drug or investigational new drug in human subject to generate data for discovering or verifying its clinical or pharmacological, including pharmacodynamics and pharmacokinetics or adverse effect, and the objective of this study should be to determine the safety, efficacy or tolerance of such new drugs or investigational new drugs. So, this is the definition as per the new drug and clinical trial rules which is mentioned in the 2J. Let us see one by one what is the meaning of this definition. So, this definition mentions about the new drug and investigational. See the first line, in relation to new drug or investigational new drug. It means it does not cover the old drug. So, whatever the trials with the old drug, that does not come under the purview of this definition. Then it is mentioning that means any systematic study. So, the meaning of the systematic study means the study which is properly designed, the study which is having the prior approval of the central licensing authority, the study which is having the approval of the ethics committee. It is as per the new drug and clinical trial rules. Study of such new drug and investigational new drug. We will see what is new drug and what is the IND in our other chapters. Just I will tell you the new drug which has not been completed 4 years, or if it has completed 4 years and if it is modified with relation to the dose, then strength, dosage form, then we call it as a new drug, and IND is when it is nowhere it is approved in the world, and this study in human subjects. So, the study should be in the human subject. If it is in animal, we call it as a preclinical study to generate data for discovering or verifying. If applicant would like to discover the data, means the data is nowhere there in the globe, and if he would like to discover the data, then we call it as a clinical trial. Or verifying, if the data is available somewhere, for example, in the country like US, Japan, and this data has to be verified into the Indian population, then the study is required for that verifying of the data, and this study is also called as a clinical trial study. Here below it is given that clinical or pharmacological, including pharmacodynamic and pharmacokinetic parameter. If the drug is already available somewhere else in the world, and if in relation to the Indian population, if the applicant would like to know what are the pharmacodynamic effect, what is the pharmacokinetic in our population, that study is also called as a clinical trial. If the study is related to find out the adverse effect, that also comes under the clinical trial. The objective of all these studies is to determine the safety, efficacy and tolerance. So, this is about the clinical trial. If any study which falls under this criteria, we can say this is a clinical trial and that clinical trial require the permission. So, the studies and research which are not following under this clinical trial, that comes under the biomedical and health research. We have seen in our lecture 3, the detail of this is given in the different chapters. Now, let us see what are these legal provisions for regulation of clinical trial and which are the rules governing the clinical trial in India. Rule 21, it is related to the application for permission to conduct clinical trial of a new drug or the investigational new drug. So, under this rule, the application has to be proceed to the central licensing authority and the applicant has to apply under this rule for the clinical trial. So, any person, institution or organization which intend to conduct clinical trial, he or she has to make application to central licensing authority in form CT04. So, earlier there was a form 44 that has been now replaced with the CT04. The application shall be accompanied with the information and document as specified in the second schedule. So, whatever the data which is required to conduct a clinical trial or to take the permission from the central licensing authority to conduct a clinical trial, the data like a preclinical study, chemical structure, then the details about the new molecule, the preclinical data, whatever this data required, that has to be submitted and that data should be as per the second schedule. The fees as specified in the sixth schedule. So, if it is a phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, then the different fees are given, whatever the fees that has to be paid along with this application. The fees required is given in the sixth schedule under rule 21. Rule 22, it is about a grant of permission to conduct a clinical trial. So, under this rule, the central licensing authority grant permission for the conduct of clinical trial. So, once the application from the applicant is with the central licensing authority, then the central licensing authorities officer, they review the applications and after having the satisfaction that the applicant has submitted all the data and document as mentioned in the concern schedule, if the licensing authority is satisfied, then the applicant may grant permission to clinical trial for new drug or IND in form CT06. Rule 23 says permission to conduct clinical trial of new drug or investigational new drug as part of discovery, research and manufacture in India. So, this is a special rule, it was not there earlier, and this is about the timelines, the within how much time period the central licensing authority has to give the permission or has to dispose of the application. So, the conditions are, this is actually related to the drug which is discovered in India and the R&D of the drug is being done in India, and also the drug if it is proposed to be manufactured and marketed into the India. For such kind of a drug which is discovered in India and the R&D has been made into the India and which is for the manufacture and market in India, the licensing authority after reviewing all the documents has to dispose of the application within 30 working days. So, this is a mandatory for the regulators or the license approving authority to dispose of this application within 30 working days, and this is as per rule 23. If there is a no communication from the licensing authority to the applicant, then that is considered as a deemed approval. The applicant can initiate the clinical trial study irrespective of the communication, irrespective of the deficiency or whether he has submitted full document or not. So, if he does not receive any communication from licensing authority within 30 working days, then it is considered as a deemed approval. For such type of approval, the applicant who has taken the deemed approval as per above rule, he shall, before initiating that clinical trial, inform to the Central Licensing Authority in form CT4A. So, there is a separate form CT4A in which he has to inform that he has applied to the Central Licensing Authority and there has been more than 30 working days, he has not received any communication and he has started the study in the form CT4A. And Central Licensing Authority, upon receiving this CT4A, shall on the basis of the said information keep this form as official record in the form CT4A. The rule 24, permission to conduct clinical trial of new drug already approved outside the India. So, the previous rule which was related to the drug which is approved in the country, and the discovery and R&D all from the India, and the drug also proposed to be marketed in the for the Indian population. For that the rule 23 was there. This is in case of the import of the drug. If the drug is already approved outside the India and if the applicant is desirous to import that drug into the country, so within a period of 90 working days, the licensing authority or the officers of CDC, they have to respond to the applicant, and within a period of 90 working days he does not receive any response from the licensing authority, again this is considered as deemed approval. So, this is according to the rule 24. Rule 25, it is related to the conditions of permission for conduct of clinical trial. Once the applicant has obtained clinical trial permission, he has to follow the conditions, and these conditions are: the clinical trial at each site shall be initiated only after approval from the Central Licensing Authority. Clinical trial site where there is no ethics committee of its own may initiate the clinical trial after obtaining approval of protocol from ethics committee of another trial. If there is another trial site and the first site, if it does not have any ethics committee, you can take the approval from the ethics committee of the another trial site, which is given under the provision rule 7. The approval granted by ethics committee, then once the approval has been granted by that another ethics committee, that should be forwarded to the Central Licensing Authority within 15 working days. Then as we know, every clinical trial it shall be registered with the Clinical Trial Registry of India, that is a CTRI. Then clinical trial shall be conducted in accordance with the requirement of GCP guidelines. The clinical trial permission, once it has been obtained, then the applicant has to follow all the good clinical practices guideline. What are the good clinical practices guideline? That has been given into our first chapter. We have seen in the chapter our lecture 3 the definition of GCP guideline. Then the applicant has to submit 6 monthly status report of each trial, whether it is ongoing, whether it has been completed or whether it has been terminated. That shall be submitted to the Central Licensing Authority electronically in the SUGAM portal. The CDSCO is having the SUGAM portal, and every application has to be made online, and the status report also the applicant can submit online through the SUGAM portal. The other condition that any SAE, serious adverse event occurring during the clinical trial after due analysis, may be forwarded to the Central Licensing Authority, chairperson of ethics committee and institute where the clinical trial has been conducted, and this has to be forwarded within 14 days of its occurrence. In case of injury during the trial, suppose any injury happens or death happens, in case of the injury the complete management has to be given along with the compensation as the formula prescribed in chapter 4. Then premises of sponsor including clinical trial site shall be open for the inspection by officer of CLA. So, whenever the auditor or the authority from the Central Licensing Authority would like to inspect the facility or the city site, it should be open to them. The clinical trial Central Licensing Authority may, if considered necessary, impose any other conditions. So, while scrutinizing the application and the clinical trial protocol, if the licensing authority and its committee finds that there is a need to change some study design or objective or the study population or subject eligibility assessment, that condition also they can impose according to the rule 25 conditions. Rule 26, it is about the validity period of permission to initiate a clinical trial under rule 22 in form CT 06. We have seen the permission is in CT 06 form, or sometimes if it is automatic approval, what we have seen, that is a deemed approval and the applicant has to submit the information for 4A. So, this permission it shall remain valid for period of 2 years from the date of issue. So, earlier in our old clinical trial rule, this type of validity provision was not there. Now, it is a 2 year from the date of its issue. Rule 27, we have seen that there is new provision regarding the post trial assess of investigational new drug or the new drug. After completion of clinical trial, any trial subject required any IND or new drug which has been approved by the ethics committee, the post trial assess shall be provided by the sponsor free of cost. If the ethics committee and the sponsor thinks that the drug which is tried on the subject which is beneficial for the subject and the drug is not available in the market, there is no alternative therapy, then with the permission and with the consent of the subject, that can be provided free of the cost. That is called the post trial assess and it is according to rule 27. Rule 28, it is related to the academic clinical trial. So, there was lot of confusion regarding the academic clinical trial, whether it require the permission or not require the permission. So, as per this rule, it has been clarified that for the academic clinical trial, that no permission for conducting academic clinical trial shall be required for any drug from the central licensing authority, but certain conditions has been stipulated according to these rules. And these conditions are: the clinical trial in respect of permitted drug formulation is intended solely for the academic research. For new indication, new route of administration, new dosage form and CT must be approved by the ethics committee. So, for having this academic clinical trial, the drug should be approved one, the molecule should be approved one, and it should be purely for the research purposes, and that may include the research on new indication, new route of administration, dosage form or the strength. Observation generated from such clinical trial are not required to be submitted to the central licensing authority. So, these observation, whatever the outcome from this academic clinical trial, that is not required to be submitted to the central licensing authority. However, it requires the ethics committee approval, we have seen earlier. The observation of such clinical trial are not used for any promotional purposes. As it is a academic clinical trial, the observation or the outcome, it should not be used for any promotional purposes or it should not be used for any commercial purpose. So, these are the conditions. Then academic trial shall be conducted in accordance with the approved clinical trial protocol by ethics committee. So, as I have mentioned, the ethics committee has to approve this, and once it has been approved by the ethics committee, the protocol, whatever the protocol approved by the ethics committee, the same has to be followed by the researcher. Ethics committee and principles specified in National Ethical Guidance for Biomedical and Health Research. So, we will see in our subsequent lectures this national guideline on biomedical and health research. So, if it is academic clinical trial, then the protocol approved by this committee, that has also to be followed by the applicant, and the guidelines which are given by the biomedical and health research, that is from the ICMR, that also has to be followed while conducting the academic clinical trial. This is mentioned in the rule 28. Rule 29, it is inspection of premises relating to the clinical trial. The person or the institution or the organization permitted to conduct clinical trial under Rule 22 in Form CT 06, we have seen the permission in CT 06 or Rule 23 in Form CT 4A in case of the deem approval, including his representative and investigator, shall allow any officer authorized by the central licensing authority who may, if considered necessary, he can be accompanied by an officer authorized by the state licensing authority. He can enter the premises and clinical trial site with or without prior notice to inspect, search or seize. In case of any violation, if he found, then the inspector or the authorized officer, they can search anywhere in the clinical trial site, or they can seize the document which are in objection. They can seize any record or the statistical results or any documents which are related to the clinical trial for the further investigation. So, this is mentioned and that should be allowed by the sponsor and the clinical trial side. Rule 30, it is related to the suspension or cancellation of permission to conduct clinical trial. We have seen the permission is granted in CT 06 and Form CT 4A, which is deem approval. So, during the inspection or if the licensing authority came to know that there is a violation of the clinical trial and the subject is not protected properly, or the protocol which is approved by the committee has not been followed by the clinical trial site and principal investigator, then in such cases, if there is a non-compliance of the stipulated conditions, that may lead to the suspension or cancellation of permission to conduct a clinical trial. So, once the regulator or the licensing authority, they observe the non-compliances, they issue a show cause notice to the clinical trial site, principal investigator or the sponsor, and after getting the reply for that show cause notice, if it is not satisfactory, then under Rule 30, the licensing authority can suspend or cancel the permission of conduct of clinical trial. Rule 31, it is a bioavailability or bioequivalence study of new drug or investigational new drug. So, as per this rule, every person associated with the conduct of BAB study of new drug or IND shall follow the general principle and practices as specified in the first schedule. We have seen in our lecture 3rd, there are 8 schedules, and in the first schedule, the principles and guidelines for the conduct of this clinical trial has been given. So, the applicant has to follow this first schedule. No person or institution or organization shall conduct BAB study of new drug or IND in human subject except in accordance with the permission granted by CLA. So, according to this rule, no one can conduct the bioavailability or bioequivalence study unless it is having a permission from the central licensing authority, and subsequently or simultaneously they should have the permission and the approval from the ethics committee, the ethics committee which is already registered with the central licensing authority as per Rule 8. Rule 32, it is the oversight of bioavailability bioequivalence study center. The work of every BAB study center shall be overseen by ethics committee before initiation and throughout the duration of the conduct of the study. As what we have seen in the clinical trial also, the sponsor has to require to allow to the licensing authority or the designated officer to conduct a audit of the site. In the case of the BAB study also, the BAB study center, they can be overseen by the licensing authority, and that should be allowed as per the Rule 32. Rule 33, it is application for permission to conduct bioavailability or bioequivalence study. So, there are separate application for clinical trial and for the conduct of bioavailability and bioequivalence study. Also, there are separate application for registration of the BAB study centers. So, as per this rule, by making an application in Form CT5, applicant has to apply in Form CT5, shall be accompanied by fees as mentioned in the 6th schedule and other information and document as specified in table 2 of the 4th schedule. So, what are the documents required, that has been given in the fourth schedule and in that schedule the various tables have been given. So, according to the table 2, the information document has to be submitted for the BAB study. Then no fee for conducting BAB by central and state government funded institutions. If the central government agencies or state government agencies, like government agencies, if they are involved in the BAB study conduct or the trial conduct, then the fees is not required as per the rule 33. Rule 34, grant of permission to conduct bioavailability study and the bioequivalence study. We have seen the conditions for the clinical trial also. These are also more or less similar conditions the applicant has to follow after getting the permission from the central licensing authority. So, central licensing authority, after scrutiny of document furnished in application form CT5, if satisfied, grant permission in form CT7. So, if it is related to the bioavailability and bioequivalence study, then the permission in form CT7. If it is related to the clinical trial, it is in CT6. If the licensing authority is not satisfied, then they may reject the application. Some deficiencies in the application may be rectified within the stipulated period of 90 working days. If there are some deficiencies, then the query letter is issued from the central licensing authority and that has to be rectified. In case of rejection application, applicant may request central licensing authority to reconsider their application within period of 60 working days from the date of the rejection. So, there is a scope for the application even after the rejection of this application. The applicant can again apply and can again request to the licensing authority, but that is within a 16 working days period he can apply and request. Applicant who is aggrieved by the decision of central licensing authority. In case if it is not considered by the central licensing authority, then again he can go to the further stage, that he may file appeal for within a 45 working days, and that appeal also would be considered, and after having the satisfactory report or the satisfactory justification within 45 working days, and in such case the licensing authority and the government, they may dispose of the application within period of 60 working days. Rule 35, condition of permission for conduct of BAB study center. We have seen for the clinical trial that each site shall initiate the study for BAB only after the approval of the protocol. Then if there is no ethics committee approval from that side, the other sites can be taken. So, these conditions we have seen earlier, these are same like a clinical trial. Inspection we have seen. Then the rule 38, it is a suspension or cancellation of permission to conduct bioavailability or bioequivalence study. Any person or institution to whom the permission has been granted under rule 34 in form CT7 fails to comply with any provision, then in such case that permission can be cancelled. If there is a violation of the protocol, deviation from the protocol, then if the licensing authority considered that the condition imposed has not been followed, then can cancel or suspend the permission. Rule 101, it is related to the waiver of the clinical trial. So, the central licensing authority with the approval of central government may specify by an order the name of the countries from time to time for considering waiver of local clinical trial for approval of new drug under chapter 10. So, the meaning of this is that if the drug is already approved in some stringent regulatory authorities, the name would be specified by the name of the countries would be specified by the central government authority by the gazette notification. And if in that country the drug is already approved for more than 2 years, 3 years, and there is no data regarding the adverse effect or side effect of that drug. So, in such cases, after deliberating the proposal, the committee and the central licensing authority can give the clinical trial waiver. So, this is about all the chapter 5. Let us have the quick look about the summary. So, in this lecture 5, we briefly learn about the clinical trial. We have seen the rule 2J, wherein we have seen the definition of clinical trial, which is a systematic study for new drug, and the IND. Then we have seen the bioavailability and bioequivalence related rules. We have seen the academic clinical trial. What is academic clinical trial? Whether the permission from the CLA is required or not. Then we have seen the rules regarding applications and the permission, the various forms required for the application, and in which form the permission is granted by the central licensing authority. We have seen the rules regarding deemed approval, the timeline, that is 30 working days if it is the drug in the discovered in the India, and it is 90 days if it is to be imported and approved somewhere else. Then rules for the conditions of license. We have seen the after obtaining the clinical trial permission, what are the conditions the applicant has to be followed. Then what are the conditions for the inspection? Central licensing authority can inspect the facilities, can inspect the trial site, BAB study, and in case of the violation, the central licensing authority can cancel the permission, and under which rule that cancel the permission, that rules we have seen. So, let us have the quick recap. You have to answer the question as usual. The first question for you: under which rule permission to conduct clinical trial of new drug already approved outside India is mentioned? So, this is a rule 24. The next question: what does rule 36 address? So, in the rule 36, the validity period of permission to conduct BAB study has been given. The next question: clinical trial shall be registered with the CTRI is addressed under which rule? So, you have to mention which rule under which the CTRI has to be given registered. So, answer is rule 25 and rule 35. We have seen it is mentioned under the rule 25, and somewhere in the conditions also it is mentioned to register under the CTRI. So, this is about the lecture 5. We will come with the next lecture. I hope you have enjoyed this lecture. So, till the next lecture, take care, thank you, all the best, and bye bye.